Yeah, just as far as Indiana basketball, the influx of talent is going to be greatly enhanced. Already has been. Anything that they've lost, in my opinion, they have gained. They've replaced and gained. You look at Hunter or at his position, you've got a better shooter, a better statistical player. Armand, I think you got a better statistical player and replacement already. So they've already gained in that regard. And then the talent that's coming in is way better than the talent that was brought in prior to, especially last year. I mean, you look at the guys that are coming in this class versus last class, no offense to those guys, that this is just better caliber of players, period. I do agree with you that they weren't developed. They weren't developed at all, and that hurts them, but they're still better. I mean, these are top 50 guys that are coming in.
Well,
plural.
Well, I was going to say, I think that you make a good point. I think that the caliber of player that Mike Woodson is bringing in is probably better, but I still, people, we've had this discussion multiple times, will say that talent was a problem under Archie Miller. I just don't agree with that. I mean, Indiana had the talent. If you would have put them under about 8 or 9 different head coaches in the Big Ten, they would have finished top 5 every year and been in the in-state tournament. I think they were that good.
Okay, I would agree with you there. Top 5 in the league?
Yes, top 5 in the Big Ten, yeah.
Exactly, and that's all they would have ever done. That would have been their ceiling because that's all the talent level he can get. This talent that's coming in now, this is going to be competing at the top of the Big Ten for a Big Ten title and competing nationally. And I'm not saying next season, but that's where they're heading with that level of talent because it's just a higher – look at the bench last year. There was a reason there was 2 open scholarships because nobody wanted to come play for Archie Miller. No out-of-state guys were coming to play for Archie Miller. No, name me a coach in America that had 2 damn open scholarships that needed players worse than anybody on the freaking planet. We're going to bank these. Yeah, you're going to bank them because nobody will take the damn things.
Well, okay. This is the point I'm going to make. If you give me – I'm just going to make this reference. If you give me Purdue's roster and you give me Indiana's roster from last season, I would have taken Indiana's roster. Purdue finished top 4 in the Big Ten. If you would have now look at where Purdue's headed this year. People have them pegged as a top 5 team. You're telling me if you would have given Matt Painter last year's Indiana team, I guarantee you they would have been a Big Ten contender. Tom Izzo, Juwan Howard.
They didn't have the guard play. They didn't have shooting. They did not have shooting or guard play.
They didn't get it developed. That's the problem.
Well, there's some to that, but I just don't. I think the players are better. I mean,
well, I agree with you. I think the talent coming in,
Purdue's freshmen were better.
The starting point is higher, and the ceiling is higher. I'm just saying, Indiana, if you give that roster to Tom Izzo, Matt Painter, Chris Holtman, Juwan Howard, that team would be competing. I'm not saying they would be competing every single year, but they'd be a top 5 team in the Big Ten, and they would be in that Big Ten title conversation, in my opinion.
And the thing is, though, they're doing this. They're going to be doing this year after year. They're already 2020, 2022, and 23. These are all big-time players. And I've said this over and over. You need the kids from Indiana because they're great players. Yes. But there are elite players. There are from outside of this state. And that's why you still have to land the Tabors, or whomever it is, Durs, the guys that were in yesterday. I mean, neither of those guys, Kyle Filipkowski and Justin Taylor, those are the guys I'm talking about. You've got to get those guys to be a national contender. That's what I think is going to keep Purdue back. They're going to remain a regional school. They've got regional talent. They're going to be okay, and they've always been a regional school.
Hold them back. Now, hold on. I'm confused by this because nobody recruited.
Has Purdue done it? What Purdue has done anything nationally ever?
I'm okay, but I'm telling you, listen. Carson Edwards was a 3-star guard, and he turned into an NBA had one of the greatest NCAA tournament runs we've ever of recent memory. Kemba Walker was up in that category. The development matters. I'm not saying that Indiana with Mike Woodson and the way he's recruiting and the development ability of that staff, in my opinion, now I don't know those guys. In my opinion, yes, Indiana will be competing for Final Fours, national titles, Big Ten titles, what have you. But I think Purdue's more of a developmental program, and I think they haven't done anything nationally. You're correct, but they were a crazy shot away, a final 6 seconds away from beating the national champions. And
anybody can do it once, man. Doing it once.
Here we go.
I'm just saying. You have a run. Having a run one time is nice and all, but that's one run. They turned around last year and get beat by nobody.
That's true. That's a fair criticism. But
so I'm not going to give just because they had one run in a year. Yeah, that's nice. They had a run because they had a guy who's playing in the NBA.
But
so was that development, or is that because he's a really great player?
He was only a 3, but you're arguing that Purdue doesn't get those guys, and that's what's holding them back. Carson Edwards was a 3-star recruit, a 3-star out of Texas, big time. I mean, I think some of those schools down south wanted him, but I don't think
he's kind of like a Victor Oladipo.
Yeah,
Victor Oladipo's better, but Victor Oladipo was a 3-star, developed in. Tom Crean was great at developing, getting guys to develop. But I also think that his issues would have always and will always keep him where he is, struggling. He's going to be out of Georgia soon. I mean, he's just going to struggle. He's never going to be a big-time coach. He's a guy that can turn in the middle and maybe do this and do that. He's just not going to be a big-time coach. Guys don't want to play for him. The big-time elite guys don't want to play for him. We've seen it when you can see year over year, and they either want to play for a coach or they don't. And and I'm not saying Matt Painter's a great coach. There are guys that want to play for him.
Right.
I just don't think they don't have the national brand to go out and recruit. Who?
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Like Filipkowski, Justin Taylor, these guys. They're not going to Purdue.
Right.
These guys are not going to Purdue. They will come to Indiana though, but they're not going to Purdue. And that's why Indiana, within a year or two, is going to be back on the national stage. And Purdue can compete with Indiana within the conference, but it's like once you get them outside of that, their whole focus seems to be on the Big Ten because their entire success in basketball is the Big Ten. They've won a ton of Big Ten titles. Mm-hmm. They've done basically nothing nationally.
Right.
So when you're talking 100 and something years, you've had more than your chances to do something.
I agree. No, I agree with everything you just said. My only point is I think what you've seen from Matt Painter during his time there, what you've seen on their staff, I think that they develop talent really, really well. I don't think that the 5-star.
I agree with that.
And they get the guys to stick around usually 3 to 4 years. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's a big focus. So
that tells you something else too. If you got that many guys that are staying 3 and 4 years, that means you don't have elite players.
Right. But no, and I agree with that. I just don't think that that's what's holding them back because we've seen teams. I mean, you look back at that Wisconsin had Frank Kaminsky. They had some really good players. So maybe that's a bad example. But I look at that undefeated Wisconsin team or undefeated Kentucky team going into the Final Four. Nobody gave Wisconsin any chance. And I mean, that was.
Oh, I agree.
They had some NBA talent on that team, but it wasn't like it was like the Harlem Globetrotters.
But that's not a Purdue type team. Here's another example. Indiana has been down. I would say the program not down, but it has not been Indiana for quite some time.
Nope. Right.
But right now in the NBA. Purdue has all of 2 players in the NBA. Indiana has 9.
Yeah,
9 alumni in the NBA, even during their downtime. That's my point, man.
Yeah,
Indiana is a national school, a national brand. They've just fallen on some hard times. That's what's going to make it for them to bounce back so quickly and easily.
Right.
They have a fan base that is just sometimes ridiculously rabid, but rabid. And that is an advantage because you just got to pour a little bit of water on the magic beanstalk beans, and that stalk grows really fast. Yeah. Now, you've got to make sure you've got the right roots and all that. I think they've got that with Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and Thad Matta and all that. They've got that this time. They don't have that. I don't even know what you call what was last. It was just that was a farce. That was a farce. I mean, a complete, total farce. It's not the case right now. And Mike Woodson, he's got I don't want to say the pressure, but he knows the spotlight that's on him. This is a big old light, because if you do this, if you bring Indiana back to relevance, to prominence, holy crap. That's going to put you in a lot of people's minds. I don't want to say Bob Knight, but man, that's Indiana basketball, or like Kentucky or Duke, or, those things, that's big. They're just big. When you talk about the Yankees and Notre Dame football and Indiana basketball and North Carolina basketball, those are just different programs from anything else in their sport. And they just are. And it's just a fact.